Hello everyone, my name is Brendan Whitaker, but you probably already know if you name the channel. BLM has gone out of hand lately, trying to balance its message and acts as it's grown over the years to the point where it's become synonymous to a terrorist organization. Now, we already know that BLM is a communist organization that supports mainly trans women of color. Uh, Like terrorist organizations, its name is used as a smokescreen for its violent acts and planning. Like,
Sometimes this will be done by them directly through the KGB, their secret police. Other times it's done through a group badly misnamed called the World Peace Council. And I can remember a couple of years ago talking to a high-level Soviet defector called Igor Glagorev, who had attended World Peace Council meetings, which in turn had had men from what was then Rhodesia present. And they'd used the World Peace Council as the cover and the venue to discuss what weapons they needed the Soviet Union to provide them with. That is how Robert Mugabe got the guns and the rockets and the ammunition that was able to take over Rhodesia and turn it into the sad country of Zimbabwe.
the Kenosha riots, where looting and arson occurred, all in the name of Black Lives Mattering. Martyrs and evidence are manufactured to justify these riots.
The guardsmen were not professional soldiers. They had been on duty for 4 days and were under emotional strain. Upon hearing a shot from the hostile demonstrators, their reaction was predictable. They closed ranks, faced the crowd, and fired. In the melee that followed, 10 students were wounded and 4 were killed. The victims were not leaders of the confrontation, but they became martyrs for the movement. Their tragic death was used and still is being used today as evidence of the repressive nature of the United States government.
Like the Minneapolis riots, where George Floyd and Jacob Blake and many others are used to support attacking police and burning buildings down. You've all seen BLM partner with Antifa in these riots, as they have the same communist agenda with each other, and they also have the same smokescreen tactic, Antifa, anti-fascism.
But if we step back from the details, we find that several overall patterns emerge. Patterns that are more enlightening than the events themselves. The first pattern that becomes apparent is the fact that most terrorist groups today are not isolated from each other, but are in fact so closely intertwined that they constitute an international network. This was first documented in 1976 by European intelligence specialist Pierre de Villemarais in a 4-volume study published in France entitled The Secret History of Terrorist Organizations. In 1981, it also became the subject of a book by Claire Sterling entitled The Terror Network, published by Reader's Digest Press in the United States. The reality of this network is evidenced by the fact that not only do the groups assist each other, but they even carry out attacks on behalf of other organizations. For example, in 1972, at the Lod airport in Tel Aviv, Israel, terrorists with automatic rifles and hand grenades attack passengers in a crowded waiting room. Over 100 people are killed or wounded. This is not done by the PLO, but by members of the Japanese Red Army on behalf of the Palestinian terrorists. The OPEC headquarters in Vienna is
The most recent being the Portland Federal Courthouse riot, done by both Antifa and BLM. Uh, that being said, BLM is no good.
It's interesting to observe how people sometimes use words not to communicate ideas, but to conceal them. For example, while there may be terrorism in the world, there are no terrorists, at least not in their vocabulary. Those who commit these acts never refer to themselves as terrorists, but as revolutionaries. In fact, the very essence of Marxism-Leninism is the adoption of a whole dictionary of words and phrases that have quite different meanings than what they seem to have. The reality is that the Soviet Union has been pursuing the annexation of every non-communist nation in the world, but they describe that process as assisting the downtrodden peoples of those countries in throwing off their chains of imperialism, colonialism, or racism.